Okay, so I'll turn the game down. Okay, installing pistons. So basically, like I showed you with the main bearings, in the connecting rods, I take some 800 grit, wet it down, and this isn't taking any of the material out. You just give it a nice, and go in the direction of the bearing. Give it a nice little polish, just for any surface material that might be on there. These surfaces you want as clean as possible, no foreign material. So if I put the light on, as you can see, it's nice and polished, no rust, no foreign material in there. That wet sand just basically just takes the surface rust off or anything if it's been sitting for a while. As you can see. Okay, then I'm going to install the bearings dry on the side again because you don't want any chance of the bearing slipping around. So you install the side that faces this dry. The side facing up that's going to go against the crankshaft, you're going to lubricate. But this back side, very important that you install them dry. Some people lubricate them. I leave them dry because if you have them lubricated on initial startup or right away, they can have a tendency because of the lubrication to start to slip. You'll spin a bearing. You don't want that. So leave it dry. And I will come back as I'm getting ready to install the piston rings, as I'm compressing them and getting ready to install it in. Okay. Now, after you've checked the orientation of your rings, you have all your ring gaps like I showed you in the manual, lower ring gaps, second ring, first ring. You have your gaps where they're supposed to be. If you look at it like a clock, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, so on and so forth. Wherever your orientation is for your ring gap, get them set. You'll get a ring compressor like this. Invert the piston. Tighten it down. One moment. Okay, I've got it tightened down. You want to look at the top and look at where the ring goes around and make sure that you don't have any gaps. Sometimes these things won't. They'll be kind of cockeyed. And as you go to put the piston in, those rings will pop out as they hit the deck of the engine, and you can bend a ring really quickly. So make sure that you're nice, tight, nice and sealed all the way around. Then you're going to come to the block and make sure that you've got the right one, 2, 4, 6, 8. Make sure you've got the correct piston for the correct cylinder. And these ones don't have studs. If they have studs hanging out, you want to put some rubber tubing over those studs so that you don't hit the inside walls here and score the walls. This one was just bored 20 over, so obviously you don't want to scratch or damage those walls. But these ones don't have studs, so you don't have to worry about it so much. What I will do is if you look down in here, I'm going to put that, set this piston down. I'm going to put that crankshaft journal all the way down so that I don't happen to tap it by accident. Even though they don't have studs, I don't want the arm of that tapping and scoring that. So I will put it at its lowest travel point to start with while I put the piston in. That way, when the piston is flush here, the bottom of those arms won't reach that journal. I'll bring that journal up to it after I have the piston flush in here. You'll do it slowly. That way you make sure you don't score those journals. First, though, I'm going to take some engine oil and liberally coat the inside of this wall so that those rings going down don't scratch the wall. You've got some lubrication in there. Just like when an engine's running, you want lubrication on these walls. So I'm going to coat these walls. When I come back, you'll see that I have the piston set, and you'll see me actually setting the piston down in here and how I bring the journal up to meet that. You see the counter going? Okay. So now, if you shine down in there, I've got it nice and coated with oil for lubrication. Now, as you start to put this down in there, obviously you don't want to score the wall, so just come down softly, center it up with the ring on there, and you always want the orientation on these. The manufacturer, when they send you the piston tops, will tell you these arrows, it will either have an arrow or a dimple, or it'll say front. These always go towards the front of the block, so you're not orientated differently. Also, the connecting rods will also have markings for the front. The bottom cap will have a raised hump, or some of them are different, but they'll orientate which way is the front and which way is the rear. So I've got the crank at its lowest travel point so I don't score it. I've got the dimple facing forward. I've got the ring compressed. You're just going to as it starts to come out the bottom here, then you can center it so that you make sure that you're not going to bend a ring. I'm centered. we go. Now both ends are centered. Keep pressure down on here so that the rings don't pop out at the bottom. And I'm afraid that's what might have just happened. Let's see. No, maybe not. Hang on. Yep, it did. So instead of pounding down any further and bending this ring, I'm going to undo this, re-squeeze, and then I'll come back. Sometimes these can take a few times. As long as you start to feel resistance like I did on that last one where it wasn't traveling down anymore, stop, pull it, and check and see if you've got a ring popped out, because you do not want to bend those rings once you feel resistance. Get it started. Get this top end started. Now I've got both ends out. That way I can center it. Put that against the wall. Put that against the wall. Now I'm centered. Make sure my dimple's facing forward. There we go. It dropped down and it recessed without the rings popping out. So now I'm at where I'm in there. Keep it rolling for a minute. I'm going to spin. I'm going to spin this because, like I showed you, I kept the crankshaft at its lowest travel, so I didn't score it. So now what I will do, you don't have to do it this way, it's just a safeguard. I always do it this way because crankshaft journals you always want undamaged, no scoring, no foreign material in there. So what I will do is I'll come to the side of the block where I'm doing the piston. I will reach in, move the piston so that I'm fairly centered. Take the handle, tap the piston up towards me. Now make sure your bearing is set flush. It'll self-correct as you put the cap on, but and then as you get closer, slow down a little bit to make sure that you're not scoring the crankshaft. And I'm seated. Now I can take the crankshaft, keep pressure on the top of the piston, take the crankshaft and rotate it till you're almost in the center. Give one more tap on the bottom of the piston. I'm seated. That way I can take the cap with some assembly lube. And now I'm going to show you the orientation as far as you have the dimple to tell you which way is forward on the piston top. With the connecting rod caps, you'll see that you have a hump here, no hump here. The hump faces forward. Each piston is different, but they'll have some kind of marking which will tell you which way is forward. Also, you have two dimple or two pinholes here and two studs here so that you can't get the orientation wrong. So once I get the cap on there, make sure you seat it back because you don't want to be cockeyed. You want to seat it back against the crankshaft. And then I have, for the Nissan Titan, these are connecting rod cap bolts. They're like head bolts. They're stretch bolts, torque to yield. They can only be used once. You have to get new ones because if you put the old ones on and they've been stretched, they're not going to hold the torque. Eventually, over time, they're going to back out. You're going to spin a bearing in here, or this connecting rod is going to come off, and it's going to shoot through the side of your block or your oil pan, and you're screwed. So for the set of these, it was $127, but it's much better than a $2,000 motor. So I'm going to put these in. As I come down, I'm going to make sure that I'm still squared against the back here. Tighten them down finger tight. And then the specs for this call for 11 foot-pounds for the first pass. Then put your torque angle meter on, and you're going to go an additional 90 degrees. And when you're done, just like I have on this one down in here, put the paint stick, the white paint stick on the end of them so that you know that those are torqued. You don't end up coming back and putting an additional 90 or whatever and tightening them down too far. White paint stick every bolt that you have that you've tightened down that you know is done. That's why those ones are white. I've already put one piston in and I already torqued those down to 11 and 90 foot-pounds. Do the same here. That way when all these are in and if I have to go and eat dinner or something, I come back, I don't go back to one and think, oh God, did I torque that down? I look and see white paint stick marks. I know I was there. I'm not going to go back and retighten and end up over tightening something.